sermon, I kind of want to tell you how I got here. I kind of have a funny relationship with God. I'm very sarcastic to him, and he accepts it, I guess. Short story is he told me he wanted me to speak. I told him no. He laughed, and I'm here. So when I first did my testimony 2 years ago, I started getting woken up in the middle of the night, and it's like, man, I really should do my sermon, my testimony. And I was like, well, I don't have anything to share. My life isn't particularly significant. There's really nothing that's happened, which can be good or bad, depending on how you look at it. But night after night for a few months, it went on, and I literally had my entire testimony planned out. And I said, okay, fine, I'll do my testimony. And I did, and it felt amazing. And I got down, and I was like, I will never speak again. That's not happening. I don't like that. Well, here I am. So clearly that didn't work out. Well, about 6 months ago, I started getting woken up again and had this thought in my head about the type of sermon I would like to do. It was about grace and just in general being loving like Christ. And I didn't want to do it, but I gave myself 2 days. And this time I'm like, all right, just tell Tony, then you have to do this. And I did. And 4 days before I was supposed to do my sermon, Satan decided he didn't want me to speak that sermon. And my stepdaughter got sick. Her other home that she lives in, they were diagnosed with the virus, and I wasn't able to speak. So a few months later is when they had the first available time. And God still wants me to speak, and praise God, I'm here today. Satan didn't stop that. I felt a little like Samuel, I think, being called in the middle of the night. That's what I always say is, I know how he feels, because God is like, Felicia, you really need to speak this. And instead of going to Eli, I just argued with him, but that never works. So this year, I think, let's see, with a show of hands, how many think that this year was the craziest year ever? Yeah. I think from starting in March with the vaccine law, then we had the rumors of some foreign virus that was in like China or whatever, and we're like, that's never going to get here. And then it did. I went to the ER with my son, and I see the sign that said, if you were overseas, you need to tell us, you need to wear a mask. And everyone's like, well, we're going to start having to shut down. And well, that never happened. Well, it did. Schools were shut down. Church was shut down. We had to wear masks. Then we had the elections. Then we had killer bees. And yeah, anything that could go wrong did. And here we are at the other end. Things are starting to open up. And I'm praising God. But this year, I think I missed out on a lot of things. My son was supposed to graduate preschool, and he couldn't. He didn't even finish preschool. Then my husband couldn't go into my ultrasounds with my baby. And it's our last baby, so he missed everything because I was the only one allowed in there. Looking at my notes here, guys. Got ahead of myself. I missed out on my grandma. She usually comes to me, and I wasn't able to see her. And then my aunt passed away within a month of everything opening up. We hadn't seen her in a year. We got to see her for about a month. And then she passed away. We weren't even really allowed to say goodbye because the virus was going through her nursing home. But I think, honestly, the worst thing for me was seeing how people treated each other this year, myself included. I saw on Facebook, I saw it in the news, just everybody was angry about the vaccines or the masks or the elections, or honestly, I even saw some arguments where people were like, well, the killer bees don't really exist. Yes, they do. And like, okay, guys, we don't need to argue about this. But sadly, that's the state of our world. But that's not where it began. I think that this has been going on for a very long time. I hear the phrase a lot in our church that we have a heart problem. And I think that's where it starts. Yeah. But we have a hope in Jesus. He gives us grace, right? He forgives us. But do we have to be perfect for that grace? How do we treat people? Do you know? What are we supposed to treat people like? Like Jesus. But what is Jesus? How does he treat people? with love. Yes. I have a verse for you. Let me find it. All right. Please go to 1 John chapter 4. Julie, would you mind reading that for me? Verse 16.
Okay. And we have known and believed the love that God has for us. God is love, and he who abides in love abides in God, and God in him.
God is love. So it's not something we just kind of made up or thought of. It's right here in the Bible. God is
love.
He's love. And who are we supposed to be like? God. So what if we make a mistake? Let's say that we go down the path of drugs. Is God still love? Are we supposed to treat ourselves with grace? Does Jesus treat us with grace?
Yes.
Okay, so what if somebody walks in the church and they're known to be promiscuous? How are we supposed to treat them?
With love.
What about if we had a thief?
With love.
And what if somebody does us wrong? Like the worst thing that they could possibly do, and they do us wrong. What are we supposed to do?
Forgive them.
Well, I have good news. We don't have to guess. Jesus shows us examples in the Bible. Isn't that wonderful? I want to go to the first one. If you could join me in John chapter 8. It's going to be verses 1 through 12. Do I have somebody who's willing to read that for me? Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Jesus went unto the Mount of Jesus went unto the Mount of Olives, and early in the morning he came again into the temple, and all people came unto him. And he sat down and taught them. And the scribes and Pharisees brought unto him a woman taken in adultery, and when they had set her in their midst, they say unto him, Master, this woman was taken in adultery in the very act. Now Moses in the law commanded us that such should be stoned, but what sayest thou? They said, tempting him, that they might have to excuse him. But Jesus stooped down, and with his finger wrote on the ground as though he heard them not. So when they continued asking him, he lifted up himself, and said unto them, He that is without sin among you, let him first cast a stone at her. And again he stooped down and wrote on the ground. And they which heard it, being convicted by their own conscience, went out one by one, beginning at the eldest, even unto the last. And Jesus was left alone, and the woman standing in the midst. When Jesus had lifted himself and saw none but the woman, he said unto her, Woman, where are those that thine accusers? Hath no man condemned thee? She said, No man, Lord. And Jesus said unto her, Neither do I condemn thee. Go and sin no more. Then spake Jesus again unto them, saying, I am the light of the world. He that followeth me shall not walk in darkness, but shall have the light of life.
Amen. So was Jesus saying for this woman to continue what she was doing? Mm-mm. He was saying that these people who were blaming her, they weren't perfect either, but they were trying to say, well, look at her, Jesus. Do you see what she's doing? And that's how I imagine it. Like, what are you doing, Jesus? Like, do you see her? Do you see her? And he didn't say, oh yeah, man, yeah, go ahead, stone her. She's no good. He didn't do that. He said, okay, well, which one of you is perfect? But the funny part to me is he didn't even outright say it. He just bent down and started writing in the sand. And it's funny to me when I imagine this story, I imagine him looking up and be like, well, where did they all go? But he wasn't asking because he didn't know. He was asking just to make a point that they couldn't say anything because they weren't perfect. And he didn't look at her and say, you know what, you were doing a great job in what you're doing. Continue what you're doing. Don't worry about it. No, he said, go and sin no more. But he gave her grace. He treated her with love like she was a human being, correct? Yeah. And I think that, like I said, if someone were to walk in and they were a promiscuous person, how do you treat them? Well, how did Jesus treat her? What'd you treat her? Like love and grace. Didn't say, yep, continue doing that. Treated her with love. And I myself have to remember this because I think that when I've come across people in this situation, my first thought is, okay, well, why are they here? The same reason you and I are. We're all sinners, right? And God wants us here. A similar example, please go to John chapter 4. Jackie, I'm going to have my mom read this one. Verses 1 through 26.
When therefore the Lord knew how the Pharisees had heard that Jesus made and baptized more disciples than John, though Jesus himself baptized not, but his disciples, he left Judea and departed again into Galilee, and he must needs go through Samaria. Then cometh he to a city of Samaria, which is called Sychar, near to the parcel of ground that Jacob gave to his son Joseph. Now Jacob's well was there. Jesus, therefore, being wearied with his journey, sat thus on the well, and it was about the 6th hour. There cometh a woman of Samaria to draw water. Jesus saith unto her, give me to drink. For his disciples were gone away into the city to buy meat. Then saith the woman of Samaria unto him, how is it that thou, being a Jew, askest drink of me, which am a woman of Samaria? For the Jews have no dealings with the Samaritans. Jesus answered and said unto her, if thou knewest the gift of God, and who it is that saith to thee, give me to drink, thou wouldest have asked of him, and he would have given thee living water. The woman saith unto him, Sir, thou hast nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. From whence then hast thou that living water? Art thou greater than our father Jacob, which gave us the well, and drank thereof himself, and his children, and his cattle? Sorry, to what? To what verse?
It's 26.
Okay. Jesus answered and said unto her, whosoever drinketh of this water shall thirst again. But whosoever drinketh of the water that I shall give him shall never thirst. But the water that I shall give him shall be in him a well of water springing up unto everlasting life. The woman saith unto him, Sir, give me this water, that I thirst not, neither come hither to draw. Jesus saith unto her, Go, call thy husband, and come hither. The woman answered and said, I have no husband. Jesus said unto her, Thou hast well said, I have no husband. For thou hast had 5 husbands, and he whom thou now hast is not thy husband. In that saidst thou truly. The woman saith unto him, Sir, I perceive that thou art a prophet. Our fathers worshipped in this mountain, and ye say that in Jerusalem is the place where men ought to worship. Jesus saith unto her, Woman, believe me, the hour cometh when ye shall neither in this mountain nor yet at Jerusalem worship the Father. Ye worship ye know not what. We know what we worship, for salvation is of the Jews. But the hour cometh, and now is, when the true worshipers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth. For the Father seeketh such to worship him. God is a spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. The woman saith unto him, I know that Messiah cometh, which is called Christ. When he is come, he will tell us all things. Jesus saith unto her, I that speak unto thee am he.
So we have a woman who's divorced 5 times, who's now living with somebody that isn't their husband. How do we treat them? With love. Now is Jesus saying to go and continue to do what she was doing? No. But he treated her with love, with respect. And he pointed out that he knew what she was doing, but he treated her with love anyway. He knew her. He knew her heart, just like he knows ours. And I think for me, that's something I need to remember, that God knows our hearts just as well as he knows everybody else's. But we need to remember who we're supposed to emulate. And in this story, she was excited at the end, right? She wasn't like, oh man, he's the Messiah. Uh-oh. She didn't do that. She was excited. And she knew that he treated her with respect. And when someone comes into our church and they are probably worried about being looked down on, and we treat them with love and respect, do you think they'll want to come back? Yeah. Do you think that they're gonna want to know Jesus, the person that we say that we're emulating? But what if we don't treat them with grace? Do you think they're going to come back?
No.
Mm-mm. And that's something I need to remember. I sadly, in my moments of confusion and the hardships of my life, have definitely drawn people away from Jesus. And I've had people be like, I'm all set with that. And that's not fair. And that's something I'm working on for sure. I want to emulate Jesus so that when I say, oh, I'm a follower of Jesus, they don't go, don't want to go to that church. I want them to be like, I want to go there. People love there. All right, I'm going to read this one. I think this is one of my favorite Bible stories. How many of you have heard of Zacchaeus? Do you know that Zacchaeus was a sinner? I grew up around this story, and apparently I missed that part. I think when people are like, oh, who's Zacchaeus? The little short guy in the tree. That's what I remember. And sadly, I think that's what my kids remember. Well, let's read the story. Let's see what it says. Luke 19, 1 through 10. Then Jesus entered and passed through Jericho. Now behold, there was a man named Zacchaeus, who was a chief tax collector, and he was rich. And he sought to see who Jesus was, but could not because of the crowd, for he was of short stature. So he was short. That's true. So he ran ahead and climbed up into the sycamore tree to see him, for he was going to pass that way. We all know the song. Yep, he went in the tree. Okay, that's true. And when Jesus came to the place, he looked up and saw him, and he said, Zacchaeus, make haste and come down, for today I must stay at your house. All things we know, right? So he made haste and came down and received him joyfully. Now, this is the part the song doesn't cover. I think it should, personally. But when they saw it, they all complained, saying, he is gone to be a guest with a man who is a sinner? Then Zacchaeus stood and said to the Lord, 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 I give half my goods to the poor. And if I have taken anything from anyone by false accusation, I restore fourfold. And Jesus said to him, today salvation has come to this house, because he also is the son of Abraham. For the Son of Man has come to seek and to save that which was lost. So there's good news here. If we're lost, he's going to come save us, right? That's beautiful to me. So Zacchaeus is a sinner. And can you imagine someone is, let's say Pastor Tony comes up and says, hey, I'm going to come to your house today. And the whole church goes, Tony, do you know what he did? You should not go have dinner with him. I would be embarrassed. And I'm sure at that point, I don't know. for positive, but I think he was probably embarrassed. But Jesus didn't say, oh, maybe not. Maybe I won't do that. No, he went anyway. And he said, for the Son of Man has come to seek and to save that which was lost. Here he gave him grace. He treated him with love, and he still went to his house. And I want to be that person. I want to be the person where if people say, do you really know what that person does? I want to say, well, you know what? Jesus went to Zacchaeus' house and he treated him with love and grace. And I want to be that person. And I pray that I am. I pray that we all pray that for ourselves. Another well-known story, Luke chapter 15, 11 through 32. We're going to read about the prodigal son. Luke chapter 15, verses 11 through 32. Then he said, a certain man had 2 sons, and the younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the portion of goods that falls to me. So he divided them, and divided to them his livelihood. And not many days after, the younger son gathered all together, journeyed to a far country, and there wasted his possessions with a prodigal living. But when he had spent all day, there arose a severe famine in the land, and he began to be in want. Then he went and joined himself to a citizen of that country, and he sent them into his fields to feed swine. And he would gladly have filled his stomach with the pods that the swine ate, and no one gave him anything. So he's eating with the pigs. But when he came to himself, he said, how many of my father's hired servants have bread enough to spare, and I perish with hunger? I will arise and go to my father, and will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you, and I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants. And he arose and came to his father. But when he was still a great way off, his father saw him and had compassion, and ran and fell on his neck and kissed him. And the son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in your sight, and am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his servants, bring out the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and sandals on his feet, and bring the fatted calf here and kill it, and let us eat and be merry. For this my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And they began to be merry. Now his older son was in the fields, and he came and drew near to the house, and he heard music and dancing. So he called one of the servants and asked what these things meant. And he said to him, your brother has come because he has received him safe and sound, and your father has killed the fatted calf. But he was angry and would not go in. Therefore his father came out and pleaded with him. So he answered and said to his father, lo, these many years I have been serving you. I have transgressed your commandment I have never transgressed your commandment at any time, and yet you never gave me a young goat that I may make merry with my friends. But as soon as this son of yours comes, who has devoured your livelihood with the harlots, you killed the fatted calf for him? And he said to him, son, you are always with me, and all that I have is yours. It was right that we should make merry and be glad, for your brother was dead and is alive again, and was lost and is found. For those who don't know, I have 5 children, and I love them all very much. None more than the other. If one of them strayed away from the church and the rest of them stayed with me, I would be happy for the ones that stayed. But when that one came back, oh, I think I would cry. I would be like, oh my goodness, you're back. I would throw a party. And I think Jesus is like that too. He is not saying that any of us are better or more amazing than the next. But if we have all these people who are following Jesus, he loves them and he's so excited. But how exciting is it to see that one that is lost walk through those doors? And I think we should all be that excited when someone who is in sin, like ourselves have been, walks through our doors. I don't think we should say, where have you been? What have you been doing? Just be like, I am so thankful you are here today. So glad. And I want people to see that in our church. I want to be that person. Do you? I have one last story. When I did my sermon prep, I cried. So I am warning you. Luke chapter 23. Verses 32 through 43. There were also 2 others, criminals, led with him to be put to death. And when they had come to the place called Calvary, there they crucified him and the criminals, one on the right hand and on the other on the left. And Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they do." And they divided his garments and cast lots, and the people stood looking on. But even the rulers with them sneered, saying, "He saved others. Let him save himself, if he is the Christ, the chosen of God." The soldiers also mocked him, coming and offering him sour wine and saying, "If you are the Son of God and the King of Jews, save yourself." And the inscription also was written over him in letters of Greek, Latin, and Hebrew, "This is the King of the Jews." Then one of the criminals who were hanging blasphemed him, saying, "If you are the Christ, save yourself and us." But the other answering rebuked him, saying, Do you not even fear God, seeing that you are under the same condemnation? And we indeed justly, for we receive the due reward of our deeds. But this man has done nothing wrong. So he recognized that Jesus was who he was. Then he said to Jesus, "Lord, remember me when you come into your kingdom." And Jesus said to him, "Assuredly, I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise." When I first read this story, and actually when I remembered it while I was sermon prepping, I only recognized one part in here, the thief on the cross. That he treated him with grace even while he was on the cross. So even in his last moments, he was giving grace. Isn't that beautiful? But I think the thing that gets me the most is that he had all these people who literally just nailed him to the cross, who's feeding him sour wine, put a crown of thorns on his head, was making fun of him and laughing at him. And he said, "Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they do." Even in his most painful moments, he was love. He was grace. I don't know about you, but when I'm in pain, I'm not a nice person. So I can't even imagine the excruciating pain he was in. And he still said, "Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they do." And he still extended grace. He wasn't saying it was right. He wasn't defending the bad, but he still wanted them forgiven. He still extended that. And I think that's something we all can remember, even in our deepest moments, even to the worst of the worst. I have a personal example. I just want to say all the things that I talked about today are all things that I have said, all things that I have believed, all things that I have thought of. And I'm not proud of that, but I own it. And I'm definitely not perfect. And I praise Jesus that he gives me grace, because I sure need it. It's kind of a silly example. So I have 2 10-year-olds. One is my cousin, one is my stepdaughter. When they were born, I was 19, and then 21 when Tori came into my life. I knew nothing about parenting, and I sure as heck didn't know anything about car seats. So when Alicia had her car seat, she had this 90s style car seat that didn't even have the side buckles. And I look back on this picture because, of course, it shows up on my timeline to remind me of this time. She's in a car seat. The straps are twisted. The belt buckle is so low that if she was to get into an accident, she would have flown right out. And with Tori, if it's even possible, I did worse. She was 2 years old. She was tiny. And honestly, she was about the size of a 1-year-old. And I put her in a high back booster. And she wouldn't have survived a crash at all, because she would always move it, and she'd fall asleep. She'd fall over the edge. Well, now I know better. You can ask my family. I'm crazy about car seat safety. I rear face until 3 years old. I know exactly where to put the Chelsea buckle, everything. Now, you'd think that me going through this, that I would be kinder to others. But I think when I see moms in mom groups not having their car seat buckle, my first thought is, what the heck are they doing? Do they not want their kids safe? And it is complete judgment. And I don't like that about myself, but it's truthful. And I think the phrase that keeps popping up in my mind whenever this happens, and honestly throughout the sermon, is remember where you came from. I'll say that one more time because I think it's super important. Remember where you came from. Remember where you were the lowest of the low. Remember how people treated you, whether it was kindness, whether it was anger, whether it was frustration. Remember that and do better. Treat people with that grace. Remember how embarrassing it was when people treated you with disrespect instead of love. I know that's something I need to remember every day. And every time I see those car seat posts, I say, Felicia, remember that picture of Felicia or Tori? You remember how lucky you are that they're alive today and that they didn't suffer the consequences of your negligence. And I pray that we as a church, especially, we go out and we do better. We treat people with grace. We treat people with love. We remember where we came from and remember that grace wins every time. I have a song that I absolutely love. It's by Matthew West. And throughout the song, you hear the phrase grace wins every time. And at the end, it says, for the prodigal son, grace wins. For the thief on the cross, grace wins. For the blind man and the beggar, for all of those people. And basically, I'll just have to have you listen to it. But I just want us to remember that every time that grace wins. And please, please, please remember where you came from. Thank you, guys.